Hey everybody, wanted to shoot a spur of the moment round the world update here. I've been thinking about this tank a little bit the last few days. I've shot a couple of videos, I've mentioned it. This is my 29 miscellaneous. It's normally just crystal clear, nothing's on the glass, it's always really clean. I've got a rubber lip pleco in this tank that's always just kept it really clean. And I've been speculating over the last few days as to whether or not maybe something's happened to the rubber lip. Maybe it's not in there anymore, and that's why the glass is getting so dirty and the tank is starting to get a little less clean. So it occurred to me this evening that the rubber lip is dead in there. I remember it dying. It had that weird sort of white stuff all over it. It was kind of lying on the rocks and acting funny. I got it into a hospital tank. I had a whole episode of that fish passing away. And I've just got so many fish, I just lose track of who's who and what's what sometimes, and it completely slipped my mind that he had died. So fortunately, I've got a rubber lip in quarantine right now, and I wasn't really sure what tank I was going to put it in. I've got about 4 different choices that I'd like to put it in, but now that I've remembered that this tank lost a rubber lip recently, I definitely need to get it back in there. You can see how this tank's really starting to suffer and look kind of gross and grungy already, just because that rubber lip hasn't been in there for maybe a month, I guess. So that's all that's going on with this tank. We'll move right along. We got plenty to talk about tonight. My Gourami tank we're still going to have to look at from a slight angle because I've got my crab tank sitting out in the middle of the room, but we'll get to that at the end of the video. Not a lot going on in this tank. I did do a water change. I removed some of the plants and trimmed it back and opened it up a little bit more just to try to get a little bit of light in there, but it still just really doesn't get much light down to the bottom. And when I use my other camera doesn't do well in low light situations at all, and so this tank just doesn't do well with my other camera. I did a feeding video recently, and it looks so dingy you can't even really see what's going on in the bottom of the tank for the most part. So I am going to be getting in here soon and doing some remodeling now that I've got my new Brackish tank set up. Once I get this crab tank out of the way, which I said we'll get to at the end of the video, then my next project will be working on this tank. A lot of this greenery here in the middle is going to be coming out of the tank. A lot of these very small caves that are all clustered together and all grown with the roots and everything, a lot of that's going to come out, and I'm just going to get it a lot more opened up so we'll be able to see in there. The fish will be able to swim around more, and I think when I get in there I might be pulling my big clown loach out of there. Maybe not both of them, but definitely the big one I think needs to come out. You can see its tail sticking out right there. I don't know if he's going to back out of there or not and give us a little bit of a look at him, but he's getting pretty beefy. And, you know, this is a 55-gallon tank, so it might be time for him to get out of there. There we go, there's a little more look at him. So it might be time for him to get out of there and give my striped Raphael on the bottom a little more space, and then we can put the clown loach in my 125. So we'll get to the 125 later in the video as well. So my T-bar tank, not a ton going on here. If you haven't already seen them, I do have 2 new angelfish that I've added here. The one up the top is called a green giant. And then the one right here in front of us is a crystal white, or a white crystal. I never remember which one it was I bought the name under, or I bought it under. I've pretty much got my worm problem under control. Just got in there, did a few water changes, cleaned the filter, nothing major. That, you know, again, I said over and over again that those detritus worms aren't a problem, but they are sort of indicative of other problems. They're sort of a secondary issue, and the fact was I simply wasn't getting in there and doing enough tank maintenance, and it was like getting all sloppy and filthy. So I'm going to be getting in here soon and doing a little more maintenance and cleaning all this up. I did spray some hydrogen peroxide on some of these leaves that are higher up in the tank, when I did a big water change, when they were exposed above the water surface, I sprayed them down, and you can really see the difference it made. I do have a rubber lip in this tank, and now that the stuff's been sprayed with hydrogen peroxide and starting to get killed off a little bit, the rubber lip has been working on it and helping to clean it up a little bit. So hopefully this tank will be getting cleaned up here in the near future too. I also think I'm going to get in here and like maybe right here cut these chunks of Java off here and here, you know, and then just sort of remove this whole top spike and remove that whole top spike, and that'll open the tank up a little more and will allow this Java to start growing back in. All of that Java, Anubias, I keep calling it Java. All of this Anubias you see in here, all of that is all from one plant that I bought way back when I first set this tank up, maybe 5 years ago. And that was, I believe that was purchased at one of the big chain pet stores in one of those little pre-packaged containers that comes with the little gel around the roots in the bottom. So that's 5 years worth of growth in this tank with no CO2, no foods, no ferts, no nothing. And all of that Anubias looks like that. That's all one plant. It starts from down here, all this root section, all this root section, and then there's two big chunks over here. All came from the original same plant. So, moving on to my Black Ghost knifefish tank. I have been treating this for the cyanobacteria again. This time, however, I treated it with both the Ultralife blue-green slime stain remover, and then I also used some of the ChemiClean for the red slime stain remover for the saltwater tanks, and it's doing a really good job. Just last night I actually did a water change where I got in there with my scraper, and if you look in here at the glass on this side, you can see how clear it is. If you look at the glass over there or on the back, you can see how filthy it is. Now that stuff used to be really, really, really difficult to get off. I mean, I could scrub and scrub and scrub and it wouldn't do anything. So today, after a treatment with the ChemiClean, I got in there and it just came off in sheets with the razor blade, the scraper that I use. And I only did the one side because I am doing another treatment on the tank. We're going to do 2 back-to-back treatments, so I'm going to do 2 more days of allowing the chemical in there to treat it. And then when I do my additional water change and get in there, I'm going to scrape some more out. I want to try to get it on video to show you how I did it in conjunction with using a siphon hose and the razor blade to scrape it all out. And I was able to get a lot of that junk out of the tank without really dirtying up the tank as I scraped it. So look forward to a video about that coming up here in the very near future. I will be doing some updates on this tank as we sort of finish off getting it cleaned up, because I am really coming down the home stretch. If you look now, you'll see some of this stuff in here used to be bright green just a couple days ago, and I was saying how I wasn't sure whether it was algae or whether it was something else. Why wasn't it dying? Well, now that I've put that second dose of the ChemiClean in there, it looks like it's dying. So I might even do a third dose after the second one. I'm not sure. We're going to have to just wait and see how it goes. But stay tuned. Make sure you're subscribed. And there will be plenty coming up on this tank, because I want to try to finally get this tank cleaned up and then maybe even rearrange it a little bit. My native tank. The only real point of interest I have in this tank is the other day I noticed a fish that was in the back, sort of near where my surface skimmer has been lying the last several days, and it was a very, very dead fish. It almost looked cartoonish, the way you could see its spine and ribs, and you know, something had clearly been munching on it, and I assumed it was crayfish. And a little while later I came in. First of all, I was afraid that it was my little white suckerfish down there, but it wasn't. He's still doing fine. But I figured it was going to be the crayfish that were in there eating on the carcass of that dead creek chub, which is what it turned out to be. And to my surprise, I came in a little while later and it was the Chinese algae eater was in there munching away on that carcass and was just tearing it up. So that fish is still in here and is definitely still causing problems. I don't know if that's what killed the creek chub or what, but it was definitely working on its carcass. So I've been trying to put more shrimp pellets in here and just get more meaty type foods in there, but I think that Chinese algae eater is still going to be an issue. I'm actually kind of looking around for it and I don't see it anywhere. I do see, you see that little white thing right there, that's a little piece of dead fish sticking out of there, so I don't know if a crayfish got that or if it was that Chinese algae eater. So, at any rate, it was interesting to see, I've seen that Chinese algae eater sort of latching onto my angelfish before. I've seen it harassing fish before. But to stand here and watch it devouring a chewed up carcass of a fish, and I mean, it was chewing it up. There was no doubt about it. It wasn't just nibbling on it. It was munching it up. And I'm pretty sure the reason it looked like that cartoonishly skeletal fish was because of that Chinese algae eater and not the crayfish. So, just found that really interesting, and I wanted to point that out while I was remembering, while I was thinking about this tank. I wanted to remember that to everybody. Other than that, not a lot going on in here, so we're going to move along. Nothing really going on in the snail tank to speak of. It's just a snail tank. I did notice lots and lots and lots of snail eggs in there today. We can take a look at them, I guess, real quickly. You can see these little sort of globules on the glass in the front are very obviously snail eggs. But if you look in here, you see all those little globules on the glass above the water line. They look like little globs of jelly or goo or something. Those are all clusters of snail eggs too. They very often lay them above the water line as long as it's a moist environment. That gel or that goo that they lie them in, I'm assuming it's mucus, it just keeps them moist, and that's fine. As far as I can tell, that is the pond snails that do that, not the ram's horn. I think the ram's horn snails do something else. I've never really seen clusters of eggs from the ram's horn. So those little sort of jelly-like gooey pods are, I believe, from the common pond snail. So hopefully I'll have a big explosion of snails here pretty soon. My Gudgeon tank is still just sort of sitting here ticking over. I've got my rubber lip in here. You can see the little bit of movement in there. That's my rubber lip. The Gudgeon is just hanging out. I did remove some of the Java fern in here. A lot of the Java fern that was right in this area I removed, and I put in my new Brackish tank. If you haven't seen that yet, we'll be getting to that here shortly. I did consider putting my angelfish in this tank, the two new ones that you saw in my T-bar tank, and all I did was float them in the bag with this fish, and it took all of about 10 or 15 minutes for me to realize that that was going to be a really, really bad idea to put those medium, small size angelfish in a tank with this one. So I didn't. I never took them out of the bag. I never exposed them directly to this fish, but he took several shots, or I should say she. I do believe this is a female. She took several shots, it's hard to say, at the fish in the bag, so I just said, no, that's not going to work, and that's that. So who knows, maybe we'll get some tank mates in here one day, and this tank will open up and be a little bit different and a little more interesting, a little more exciting, but in the meantime, this Gudgeon is just such a cool fish that I'm not too worried about it. This tank can stay the way it is as far as I'm concerned. I'm quite happy with it. Other than that, not a lot going on. So moving on to my 125 gallon tank. This tank, I do unfortunately have something I need to talk about, and it's a sad something I need to talk about. That is my snakeskin Gourami. He's still alive, but he's got that same thing going on that my female snakeskin Gourami went through about 3 or 4 months ago, and it's the floating nose down. He can't right himself, and basically he just sort of sits there nose down. I was going to say, I'm surprised he's not moving. Whenever I come here and talk or move around in the room, he sort of starts moving around. So I'm actually going to move away from him because he's unpleasant to look at, and me being there gets him distressed, and he tries to right himself and he tries to get away from me and that sort of thing, and I don't want to stress him out any more than necessary. So unfortunately, within the next few days, we're probably going to be Not having my snakeskin gourami in this tank anymore. I'm probably just going to pull him out and euthanize him. Never once in my experience of keeping fish, when a fish has had swim bladder issues like that, have I ever seen it recover. I'm not saying they don't, but my experience is that they never have. And I just, again, if he's going to live like that basically until he starves to death, I'd rather just go ahead and euthanize him and put him out of his misery. He's about 5 years old now, pushing 5 years old. He's probably not quite 5, but he's getting there. So I don't know if that's necessarily a long life for a gourami, but he definitely lived a decent life. I have no idea why he suddenly went tail up like that. I did notice in an old video, I thought he started doing that after a water change, but I noticed in a video just before the water change that I had done, I did see him swimming a little funny. So I do believe he was actually starting to show signs of the swim bladder issue before it went full on like this, and then suddenly one day it was just boom, he's floating like a cork. So, as I said, it's probably just going to be a matter of another day or two, and if, he doesn't seem like he's starting to get any better, I'm going to go ahead and just get in there and euthanize him. So, not a happy sort of tail end to this video, but we're not done yet. We do still have an empty space right here. This is going to be where my new red-clawed crab tank goes, but I'm not sure what I want to do with it yet. The wood you see there is sized for a 20 long, which is what my red-clawed crab tank is at the moment. And I've got it sitting on this table, which is why it's kind of hard to stand in front of the gourami tank. I don't like the way the 20 long sticks sort of out of the room, so what I think I'm going to do is take the old Brackish tank that was there, which is a 20 standard, sterilize the tank, and then reestablish it for the red-clawed crabs. We'll go ahead and have a look at this one sort of out of order, even though I was going to get to it last. You can't really see much in there anyway. I've been kind of neglecting this tank since I'm going to be redoing it here in another few days anyway. But the red-clawed crabs, they don't need a ton of land as long as they've got some land they can get out onto. So I can set a 20-gallon tank up with a little bit of a waterfall type effect with the hang on the back filter. I can put plenty of room in there for the fish to swim around, and as long as I've got some way for the crabs to get up and out of the top, and a piece of wood floating or any kind of something for them to get out of the water if they want, will be fine. So we're probably going to reset this tank into a 20 standard rather than this 20 long, because I just don't like the way that sits over there. I got to make sure I don't show you what's in my quarantine tank underneath of there. So that's probably going to be a 20 standard red-clawed crab tank. I had to think about what that was going to be for a minute there. I threw myself with my quarantine tank. So this is my new Brackish tank. This is Butterbean's new home, if you haven't seen it yet. This is where all of the Java fern that got pulled out of my Gudgeon tank got put. A lot of those rocks came from, just lying around, old tanks that I've rescaped. A few of them are brand new that I've gone out and got myself specifically for this tank. We're not quite done with it yet. I've got to get the cover put over the top. I never did that the other day. I do have my cover draped around 3 sides of it, although I got to say the left side keeps falling off. So I need to get on there and secure that a little better. I've got 3 or 4 little Endler's guppies in there, and I now have 5, I think, male guppies, just various male guppies of no particular genetics. And then, of course, we've got Butterbean in there. And he seems to be very happy now that he's sort of settled in. I've got the tank blocked off on 3 sides, so he's not able to be looking out and seeing me walk past. He's not looking at his reflection as much. And he's been in this tank for about 4 or 5 days now, and he's beginning to settle in and get used to the routine. I was able to get him eating some of his freeze-dried krill, so that's the first time he's had that. He has been eating his shrimp I'm sorry, he has been eating his snails that I've been putting in there, but he's been freaking out every time I open the lid and everything. He's just not used to the new routine and the new sounds of the new lid opening up, and I just haven't been able to get him to eat any of his freeze-dried krill like he normally does. So today was the first day he actually came to the glass. He didn't run away when I opened the lid, and he went after his krill, so he's beginning to get used to the new routine here in this tank, so that's good news. So there you go, everybody. A little bit of a long one, but there was a lot going on this week, and we have now gone all the way around the world. I'm not going to go back around to the 29 miscellaneous because of the other tank that's in the way. So thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed, that way you won't miss anything I got coming up. You never know what it's going to be. See you real soon in the next one.